We're going to talk about some of the things that are hopefully on everybody's mind right now. So concerns for 2026. So I want to hear some people telling me about what are your concerns. We're in late January here of 2026. What's some of our concerns, why we're here today and looking at this year in particular. Pete's going to write them down for us. So who's got some concerns? What's your thoughts for 2026? Residue? All right. Go ahead and write down residue. Residue concerns. Okay. What's that? Moisture. Moisture. Okay. I mean, those are always concerns. What about particular right now? I mean, am I the only one that's worried about making any money? Let's write that down. Yep. Put down how to make money in 2026. I mean, we can wait for the government to come knock at our door and say, hi, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. I don't think that I want to rely on that, right? So that's a concern. What about any other concerns for 2026?
Product placement.
I'm sorry?
Product placement.
Product placement? Okay. Product like fertilizer you mean, or? Okay. Fertilizer placement. And is that you're thinking about that differently because of 2026 versus other years, or just evolving and you're thinking about that now? More.
The concept of strip till placement compared to on planter placement, better utilization of the high dollar equipment we got.
Okay.
How many guys got liquid on the planters? Quite a few. All right, we know there was only a couple, like 2 or 3 script tillers when we started out the day anyways, but looked like we had a lot of people questioning it, wanting to know more about it, so I think that'll be great.
So nothing else, 2026, nothing else is really on our minds? What do you say? What did you say? Fertilizer cost, right? Absolutely. I mean, back to kind of the how we're going to make money, but I mean, are we going to get a trade agreement with China? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? I mean, what the last WASDE report, we just came up to what, 180, 186 on corn now from this last year. They've revised it, moved that up, right? Sure seems like making more bushels and making more bushels maybe isn't the answer. I mean, I know that I want more bushels so I can get more money, but if we all think that way, we're just going to keep raising that average up, right? I mean, in what was it, 2010 or something like that, when Monsanto told us by 2030 to feed the world, we need to be raising 300 bushel corn. Well, here we are getting close to 2030, where our average is 186, and we got too much corn, right? So maybe bushels aren't the answer.
So I'm looking for a question for you. Where is the top of my curve? What I mean by that is, okay, you said, yeah, more bushels sounds great. Okay, if it costs me X to get 300 bushel corn, what if I spend a heck of a lot less, but I get 250?
Yep.
Where's the top of that? You know, where's my diminishing return?
Yep. Yep. We're going to talk about that a little bit.
About that?
I just saw, I think it was yesterday or day before, David Hula, you know, the world record holder for corn. He was talking about his 600 bushel corn. And he said, you know how much inputs it takes for 600 bushel corn? He was over without land price, he was over $1,700 an acre for inputs. Now you do the math on that, 600 even at $4 corn, 600 bushel, $2,400 an acre. Okay, that math's out. Even if you put in the $350 or so, we're still at a $300 profit by that math. Well, that's pretty damn good. I'd sure accept that. But if you're shooting for 600 bushel, you better not miss it and go only 525, because that math looks a whole lot different at 525. So, point being is, to Pete's point, maybe we shouldn't be shooting for 600 bushel. Maybe we need to be looking at the return on investment. Now, I know that in our world, when we're talking about iron and we're talking about some of these products, we're talking about ROI, but on the farm, it's all of your inputs, fertilizer, seed, everything, tillage, all of those costs. So we're going to talk a little bit about the ROI on the farm. Okay, so this is for 2026. These are some of the things that you guys have said. Is there anything different that you're looking beyond 26 to 27 and 28 or 29? Would those things change? Okay? As I'm sitting here today, maybe we've got China trade, who knows, right? Earlier this week, President Trump was in Des Moines, right? Was talking about mandating E15. All right, great. Making them use more corn. Okay. But we don't know where we're going in after 26 with 27, 28. In my opinion, there's a chance that we could be looking at the same thing in 27 and 28 and 29 as what we are today. If somebody in here thinks otherwise, please let me know what crystal ball you're looking at. Now, there's some potential, some positives. We are using more corn in the world. That's good. And so that can, maybe that can keep helping. But in my opinion, I don't think that's a given for 27, 8, and 9. Okay? So if these are my concerns for 2026 and 27 and 28 and in the foreseeable future right here, we all want more bushels. We need to be talking about, we're always trying to move that bar, but do we spend X amount of dollars more to get, our next little record, the next 10 bushel, the next 5 bushel? Those are some things to consider. So ROI, we're going to talk about that, all right? One of these here work, did you say? All right. Okay, so same thing, 27, 28, 29. All right. So, our concerns. What, so what, now what? That's what we're going to talk about here for the next hour or so, is what, so what, and now what. So, what is identifying our concerns? So what? Okay, so if my concerns are, am I going to be profitable in 2026? If the answer is no, then what? Okay? Obviously, we don't make any money in 26, and then that keeps on in 27 and 28. That becomes a big concern for us, right, and our livelihood. So here's the big question. Now what? So if that's what we're staring at, what are we going to change? So when we start talking about in 2026, Pete and I talk about this a lot. We can make really cool stuff. But when we go and try to bring that to your farms, if I can give you something for $500 that works pretty dang good, but I can give you something pretty cool for $900, can I show you the return on that extra investment right there? So that's what we're talking about, and we talked a little bit earlier about the difference between the air adjust and the air assist. All right, our air assist doesn't have quite the same features as the air adjust does, but comes in at a lower price point, and we feel as though there's a tremendous amount of value, at least to get into that. So maybe it does make sense to go to the little bit less expensive if we're buying it right now to make sure that we get a better ROI for 26 and 27. So that's what we're going to talk about is how are we going to change? Anybody ever heard this from Albert Einstein? We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking that we used when we created them. Point being is maybe we have to start thinking a little bit differently if we're in this boat where we've got too much corn, too much soybeans. All right, we always are trying to get more yield, right? So we spend a little bit more, we get a little bit more yield. We rescind that price back that we really have no control over. Does that change our mindset? All right. In my opinion, when I'm looking at my numbers for 2026, if I shave $5 off of this and $10 off of this and $8 off of this, that's nice and that helps. That doesn't really though move the needle for me. So maybe we have to start changing our mindset a little bit as opposed to just a little bit less or just a little bit different than what we had been doing before. So when you're looking at your numbers, for the moment, let's just entertain imagining the unimaginable. All right, how would your numbers look if you had 0 fertilizer costs? What's that?
Real good.
Yeah, that's right. If everything else stayed the same, but we put 0 on all the fertilizer, right? Or even if we could significantly reduce that, maybe we have a little bit of nitrogen cost, but we don't have any P and K, right? Still, now we're talking $200-300 in there, on our fertilizer costs. That starts changing that balance sheet. All right, chemical cost, $100 an acre, $70 an acre. We start taking that out of there. All right. Nobody's driving the tractors. Okay, maybe that doesn't directly change the balance sheet, but on like a per acre, but when we didn't have as much labor. Okay, and if we could increase the yields or we could keep the yields, right there were the same. All right. So now Pete just mentioned, is it worth the return on investment there to go from 240 per acre up to 250 per acre? What's it cost for that extra 10 bushel, right? So maybe we do reduce it by a little bit, but I'm not talking about, if you're cutting your yields in half. All right. Now, maybe you're sitting there thinking, yeah, that sounds great, Andy, but we're not going to stop putting fertilizer on and get all the same. Maybe you're right. But we at least have to start thinking differently and entertaining it. What if? I know it seems impossible. So I'm going to touch on cover crops just for a moment. This is not going to be a cover crop discussion, but what I will tell you on cover crops is I have personally seen unimaginable things. I mean, I've used some cover crops and all of a sudden you're like, wow, what happened here? How did that happen? Intangibles, resiliency, all right? Water infiltration, resiliency so that we can take on Mother Nature, right? And ultimately, it's the biology that we get from that cover crop that is now actually starting to do these unimaginable things for us. I've seen it. I know guys that are, in fact, reducing their fertilizer down to nothing or darn near nothing, and their yields are still maintaining really close, maybe not quite as high, but really close. All right? Seems unimaginable. Now, the difficulty with cover crops is we are used to, as humans, we are used to, if I use this or I add this, then I get this result. And I will tell you that that's one of the difficulties that I've seen with cover crops, is I don't just go from not using them to use them and then all of a sudden, okay, well, I used a cover crop and I gained 5 bushel. Or I used this particular cereal rye or these clovers or whatever, and it lowered my cost by X amount. That's the difficult part. But cover crops are one thing that we can entertain that possibly could be moving that needle, and it could be doing these, what we think of as unimaginable things. This is one way that I sum up my experience with cover crops. And Pete, I guess you can sit down if you would want to. You don't have to stand there anymore. But sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. That sounds a lot better than saying sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, right? But every time that I've had a hit on yield, or I felt like I was going to put X in and I was going to get Y out and I didn't, I've still learned something. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to get into cover crops. We're not going to dive deep into that. But the whole point here of today is thinking a little bit differently. So this is a good way that I would say my experience with cover crops, I'm still using them. I'm continuing to learn. Sometimes that cost of the education is a little bit higher than others. I will admit that. So when we start talking about thinking differently, this is the part where I say we've got to back all the way up, and we can't just start assuming certain things that we've always done. So make no assumption, question everything, all right? So we can't be saying, all right, well, I've already got this tool, Okay, that sounds great, Andy, but I've got this tool, it kind of does that, and so I'm going to use that. That's great that we can start, that we can start reducing the costs on the fertilizer and the nitrogen and everything, like, all these things that we're talking about. But I know I'm going to use anhydrous because that's the cheapest. Okay. Dry fertilizer is my only P and K. All right. These are all things that I oftentimes see. All right. I can't do strip till, or I can't do that in the spring because I don't have time. I understand the challenges, but we have to question everything, and we have to start with the slate. All right. So this is, again, we're talking about ROI, and we're talking about changing your mindset that's going to help us in 26 and 27 and 8 and in the future. Change and adapt, and you have to weigh the good and the bad. So 2026, here and now, compromising ROI versus the mind shift. A little plus a little plus a little, does it equal a lot? Is that enough? If we start shaving $1 and $5 and $10, is that a lot? Does that equal a lot? Or are we going to change a lot of things to save $5 and $3 and $8? And at the end of the day, it's a whole lot of change, and what we're doing is saving $10. And we're talking about 26 and 27 and 28. Is the ROI that we're talking about going to be repetitive in those years? So some of these pictures, actually pretty well all these pictures are mine. We've got cover crops. We've got no-till. Planting into these cover crops, maybe that's not something that, for 2026, we're sitting here today and, all right, I'm going to start putting cover crops in, and maybe we're not planting into these conditions. All right, I understand that. But no-till, maybe that's the answer, right? Maybe for 2026, it's just simply, all right, I'm going to set myself up for no-till. I've not been no-till in the past, but that's a way that I can reduce input costs. Maybe that's an option. The point of no-till is conservation, decreasing our inputs, soil health, and increasing the carbon in that. So these are things that definitely can start to change the ROI for us, and we can start to get positives in 26 and 27 and beyond. Those are all positives.
Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to check out our complete Yetter Solutions Sitter playlist at YouTube. And as always, we're here to help you find profitable solutions for your operation. So, if you need more information or have a topic idea for a future episode, drop an email to solutions@yetterco.com.